Contrary to some beliefs, the vampire, like any other night creature, can move about by day, though it is not his natural time, and his powers are weak.
That's another thing that it's always kind of, I don't know if it should bother me as much as it kind of does, but whenever he meets her in the street, when we lead to the Oceans of Time scene,
Right.
it's in the daylight.
Right, and that's part of
So like, okay, I didn't think he could do that, but all right.
They can, and then that's something that's really interesting. Is I did some research on just the whole lore of how Bram Stoker came up with that, and I don't know when the shift was. They're weaker in the daytime, but they can be in the day.
It can't be exposed.
Here's another thing that dawned on me recently. How does Christopher Lee die in Prince of Darkness?
Gosh, because I somehow knew you were going to ask me this, and it was going to stump me. Because I remember there was one where he was held at bay with two candlesticks being made into crosses until the sun hit him from the curtain being pulled down.
That's the first one. Yeah,
that's the first one. Then, is there one where he was exposed to salt water?
What it was is he was on in the daylight. He's on ice, and I guess the sun had just set behind the mountain, but it's not really set. They're still in daylight, and he's standing on ice, and it cracks, and he goes in the water. And I'm like, how did that kill him?
I knew that is part of the mythology, is that salt water will kill a vampire.
Well, what kind of salt water's around a castle? He's not in an ocean.
I would say ask Christopher Lee, but he's no longer with us.
Okay, so as far as the actors in this film, Anthony Hopkins and Keanu Reeves kind of weren't my favorites in it. But you think about all the girls in it; they're all beautiful. And then you got Winona, and she's just kind of sweet and innocent looking, but she's not like knockout. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, she's like the cute neighbor from down the street. Whereas,
yeah, right.
It's like I always felt like that Sadie Frost should have been playing that part, because she just seemed like to be the stronger actor. She had the stronger presence. I know that Winona was a more bankable name, but I still think that.
You talking about Lucy?
Yeah.
So Lucy, all the girls are just so, and they're all great actors. Even these girls who are playing the brides, who don't say hardly any lines of any, still have strong presences, right? But Lucy, yeah, she was gorgeous. And then you see her with the wig off, and you're like, that's the same girl? You know?
And I really don't know of anything else that Sadie Frost has done. But
no, I know that she married Jude Law, and it didn't last forever. I had no idea.
Right, yeah.
Try and remember who told me this story. And it was about Coppola losing his shit on Gary Oldman and almost shutting down the production. Have you heard about this?
I remember that Coppola was kind of being very Kubrick-ish, and it was starting to drive Gary Oldman, for lack of a better term, batshit.
Well, that's the scene that was an issue. They were rehearsing it at this church. It was real close on Highland, by where Bonnie and I used to live. And Gary Oldman stopped everything. He says, Francis, I can't do this scene. I'm nude. I'm in my underwear, and all these guys are coming in, and it doesn't work for me. I don't understand how I'm supposed to be scary when I'm making love with Mina and all that. So Francis lost his shit and told everybody to take a break, and then he sends someone in and says, basically, I'll let you guys know by the end of the weekend if we're going to do this movie. So it was like everybody's like, whoa, what the hell just happened, right?
Wow.
And I was trying to remember where I had heard the story, and then I realized it was from the master himself. So Bonnie and I have become friends with Jim Hart, and he was being a gentleman, and he spot me several old fashions. So we're sitting on top of a roof of this really, swank hotel, real close to where we live, and great view of downtown, all this stuff. And he's telling me a story, and he's like, he had to go to Francis's hotel. I think he flew out in the middle of the night to go see him. And he got in his hotel, and then Francis calls him up and says, is your hotel okay? He goes, yeah. Are you sure your room's okay? He goes, yeah. So it was just he and Jim that were going to make a decision if they're going to make this movie or not. And it's like, can you imagine after all this time, it could be going down? What Francis was doing is a power play to get control and make sure that,
Right.
because artists can be sometimes, and I'm sure Gary Oldman at that point was becoming kind of in character, uncontrollable. So he was trying to show him, I can pull the temple down on top of all of us, right? But he also was playing with Jim a little bit, and he had a key. And right after he got the call and got off the phone, he started to hear the door, and it was Francis. And he opened the door and he sticks his head into the hotel and he goes, "I can get you a better room than this." And Jim knows what he's doing, and he's waiting for him to be invited in like a vampire.
Like a vampire.
But he never would. He never invited him in. And so they had this whole, this is it. This is what made me think of the story, is that you were talking about how they're in the daylight, and he sees in the window, he doesn't see, no one can see his reflection. Remember that?
Right.
Okay. So Francis asked him, he goes, what do vampires see in a mirror? And Jim goes, that's a really good question. And it turns out they can see themselves. That's why they don't like to see, like the picture behind you right now. They don't like to see the beast within that other people can't see. Oh, he said something. So what if he turns into a bat? And Jim hated the idea because of how cheesy those vampire 50s films, like Abbott and Costello, right? It's like, well, how big's the bat? The size of F-14? And Coppola goes, no, well, how about this? And he brings over. He had the thing made that Gary Oldman ended up wearing. And they both looked at it and go, that's it. That's it. And can you imagine the movie without that?
Oh my God. No, I can't. Because the lines of dialogue that Oldman delivers in that scene, to me, are every bit as impactful as the Oceans of Time and, where the devil's children still walk with earthly feet. Those are some of my favorite.
What is the line that you remember from that?
From that scene?
Yeah.
Is I commanded nations hundreds of years before you were born, and look what your God has done to me.
Bravo, man. You got a great memory. So most of that was written by Jim Hart.
Why am I not surprised? Because that man can write.
Oh, yeah.
That's brilliant stuff.
Gary ran up to Jim, and he goes, I have one suggestion, one addition. I'm going to do it in the scene. And he watched it, and he goes, look what your God has done to me. And Jim was just like, whoa.
I was betrayed. Look what your God has done to me.
And that's basically what the film is about, Mm-hmm. He's been like Lucifer. He's been cast down. He's been shunned from humanity, and the end is about redemption. So it's like perfect,
I don't know so much if he'd been shunned from humanity, or I don't even know about him if it's about him being cast down. He turned his back. He just
and that's the thing about Byronic characters, and that's what I like.
Yeah, well, yeah.
It's a two-way street.
Yeah. It's the sword cuts both ways.
Yeah.
That you're going to tell me, and I'm speaking as Vlad here. You're going to tell me that I dedicated my life to defending to fight in the name of the church, and because some asshole tricked my wife into thinking that I had died in battle for you, and she's thrown herself out of a window out of pure despair and heartbreak, that now she's damned.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
While I was on fighting for you.
And that's so I have always related to Byronic characters. I've always related to visceral characters that not every like Kong. Dracula was always my favorite. Both of these are two of my favorite things from childhood. I loved the first thing I ever wrote in my mind. I was playing the score. I was and the music's so dramatic. My dad comes in and rushes in the door and goes, "What are you listening to? Did you take one of my albums?" I go, "No, this is mine."
Calm down.
It's not yours, Dad. It's my music. But because he thought it was Bernard Herrmann's Obsession, and it sounds a lot like it. But I'm listening to his music, and I guess I've always been a romantic, and that's another reason why I love this Dracula the most, because it's the romantic story. But my imagery was of Dracula and his lover floating in the air, and I didn't know what lovemaking was, so it was all the kissing, you know. So they're kissing or whatever, and biting and whatever, and the castle's going up in flames, and the sun is rising, and you know, all the people, their torches are coming in, but they basically make a choice to say society, and they burn up in the air, right? Which is pretty cool imagery for a 6-year-old child, right?
That's deep.
Yeah, and I've always related to the tragedies, man. I think that they're more. Well, let's get real. I mean, life is tragic. I mean,
well, and that had a lot to do with when we were growing up. The films that we were watching in the 70s were very, very, very dark, and you know, you had that particular group of filmmakers that were kind of on the rise, that were making these films that weren't as full of sunshine and optimism as the films that had preceded.
No, they're more realistic. And think about, this is one thing I love about Dracula, our generation, and the 70s. Coppola is known for The Godfather, 70s, right? More or less the king of the 70s. You know, granted, there's Lucas and Spielberg who were doing their thing, which are phenomenal, but Francis just, it's really hard to not think of the 70s and not think of The Godfather. But then the 90s come, and our generation gets Dracula. And this film was the source of redemption for him, because his career was kind of going all over the place, you know? This movie kind of saved him and put him back on the map.
It saved the studio, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But this movie, more or less to me, is our Godfather.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about this. I'm shifting themes here, but when you think of The Godfather, you remember the music. You remember Nino Rota's music, and it's hallmark, and it's classic, it's epic, it's romantic. And I got to tell you, Jim Hart, Coppola, cast, crew, DP, all make Dracula great. But Wojciech Kilar's music for Dracula has to be one of the best soundtracks in cinematic history.
It is next level.
He found the guy. He'd already been doing films in Europe, but he brought him into the Hollywood arena. And I mean, I think he contacted him at 3 a.m. is what I heard. Can you imagine this film with any other score?
No. You know, and for years I worked in haunted houses. Like I was one of the actors that would chase you out the back door with a freaking chainsaw dressed like the Grim Reaper. And after this film came out, this, along with, I guess, certain select from Carpenter's Halloween soundtracks,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
were constantly used as in just music that played throughout the house that set the mood.
yeah.
You heard the Dracula and Mina, and you
Really?
heard the Vampire Hunters. Those two pieces were on a loop in almost every
I would-
haunted house I ever worked in.
For that, I would have used the opening, which is, with the Turks and all the silhouette of stuff that Roman was shooting with, them sliding down the spears. That music is just so next level, like you said. But when you hear the extended version of it, it actually makes it scarier sounding. I'm curious if the extended version, if they had an extended version of Dracula, if it would be scary. Because I don't find this one scary. I just find it beautiful. I find it almost like a fantasy. It's not like the Hammer stuff, which, like I said, sometimes kind of came off hardcore. I mean, you got a guy hanging upside down, his throat's cut, all his blood's coming out into dust, and suddenly he's, reborn or whatever, undead, unborn,
Unalive his ass.
Yeah.
there is just such a poignant beauty to this thing that to me, Coppola achieved what I thought was going to be the unachievable. In you've successfully made Dracula, of all characters, you've made Dracula a sympathetic figure.
Right.
That you relate to him. I know you and I both relate to how you can love someone so much that you would basically sell your soul to save them.
Oh gosh, I would cross oceans. I feel like I did cross oceans at time.
As did I. It was a 30-year gap between the last time I saw my amazing wife and us getting together and getting married. It's just one of those things where I didn't think it would ever happen. Didn't think it could ever happen. Tried to find her for years, and
nor did I.
And here we are. And the funny thing is, both you and your wife and me and my wife are all crazy about this film. And it's got nothing to do with the fact that I like it, that she likes it, or she doesn't like it because I like it, I like it because she like it, and you're in the same boat. You liked it. We all liked it independent of that.
Well,
it spoke to us.
So if you go to 2016 on Facebook, I started posting like the artwork for my cover page. When I saw Bonnie from afar, remember, it was so cool. I have a friend in LA who's a gaffer, worked for me. And he goes, "See me." He goes, "Such badass line, right?" And that's exactly what I was doing to Bonnie. I was communicating to her without. I knew I was going to marry her before she knew it. Right? I don't know how I knew that. I don't know how I knew that.
I know I was going to marry Shannon in 7th grade, so she just.
Oh wow, that's awesome. Well, there we go.
Yeah.
It is Ocean's.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bonnie was in Oregon. I was in Austin, Texas, and I was posting the imagery. And I had said 1 year prior to seeing her, I had realized that Poe was my White Shepherd, and he goes, what's the line in there? He's like, there's much to be learned from Beast,
He likes you,
And there is so much. I don't know that the way he says that to her, it almost seems like a throwaway line when he says he likes you. I'm like, yeah. But it's not. There is definite meaning to of him saying that, of like, he don't like nothing.
Yeah, he's a wild wolf that just got out of the zoo, but for some reason he likes me because I'm an alpha and I control all these armies, blah blah.
The more that you peel away, the more that you reveal that it's so much more than just surface experience. I know that we were initially talking about just the principle, the leads of we were kind of dissecting Anthony Hopkins' over the top delivery of Van Helsing, and then the ladies and Keanu having one of the worst British accents in the history of film, to where I think it is kind of ironic that a guy that actually said, unlike
some other Robin Hoods, I can speak with an English accent.
Who said that?
Cary Elwes said that in Robin Hood Men in Tights because he was taking a jab at Kevin Costner. So, and I find it ironic that Cary Elwes is in this movie.
Yeah.
With another actor that is struggling to maintain.
Let them go. Our work is finished here. Hers has just begun.
Winona was struggling just as much as Keanu was. But when you go back and look at Keanu Reeves' body of work around this time, he was putting out a movie like it seemed like every few months Keanu was the lead in something.
I feel so bad for him because he's such a good person,
he's such a great guy. He's really
Coppola is known for having some of the best actors, right? But one thing I like about him, and I respect the hell out of it, is he brings, when he finally I think he feels like his role as a director is to find the right part of the equation. Like when he told Killar, he hired him and he goes, "What kind of music do you want for this?" And he goes, "I've done my part. Now it's your turn. You do your work." And that's cool. That's when you say, "I respect you as an artist to go off and do your thing." Keanu, man, I'm a kind of guy when I direct. If somebody can't do it, I don't put them in it. It's just, there's not enough time in the day for me to try and on my film, I tried out an American accent with a British actor. I said, he told me he could do it. He done Grease. I'm like, no, it ain't working. It's a lot of work, man. And they put a lot of work in, a lot of rehearsals, like 6 months or something like that. One thing about this that I realized is, for a film that was shot in a studio, Jim Hart was working on Hook and Dracula. Both of those are shot inside studios. But both look so different. Clearly, one's a fantasy, but
they're both a fantasy if you really
right. Yeah. So
one,
and they both have
a
to
little
do
bit more bright and optimistic, and one is dark as hell. You know,
right? One's they're both about mortality. But Michael Bauhaus's work, his cinematography, the lighting, a lot of times you forget it's on a studio. You know, and you know the practical effects done by Coppola's son is the exactly kind of stuff I get off on. It wasn't a bunch of CGI. There was a morph at the end, but for the most part, it's all in camera kind of stuff, and that's the stuff that I've always loved.
The story was that, you know, his effects team kept telling him, "You can't do what you're wanting to do practically," and he said, "Really? Well, then you're fired." And then then he just pulls Roman over to the side. He goes, "You can handle this, right?" And Roman's like,
"Yeah." I don't do well when people tell me you can't do something.
Okay. But I love the fact that it was basically advanced stagecraft that was just put on celluloid. Yeah. And I mean, the only I think one of the only shots that ever really makes me kind of wince is right at the beginning, whenever Harker is coming up to his castle and you see that lightning strike. Yeah. And it looks so obvious that it's like a neon light or something that they just
yeah. I kind of dig it. I don't know why. You know, I don't know what it is.
I was like, y'all probably could have done a little bit better than that. It just looks like cracked glass with light shining through it. That's the only thing that really bothered me. Everything else, as far as the practical effects, again, going back to the bat scene, right, where he retreats into the shadows and turns into freaking rats. And I'm just like, damn. Every time I see that shot, my head explodes. It just that may be, other than the Oceans of Time dialogue and when she says, "Take me away from all this death."
Do you like that line?
I love that line.
I don't like her delivery of that line.
I don't like her delivery, but I like that. Well, let me say, I like that scene.
Take me away from all this death.
Oh, love the scene. Love the scene.
It's this give and take. You know, she goes from despising him after realizing that he's responsible for her best friend's demise, and then all of a sudden, just, you know, the switch flips, and just everything that leads up to the look on his face whenever he knows that they're on the way into interrupting him. Yeah, you know, it's just, he just has that he goes back into feral mode, and oh god, just there's so much to that scene that you could just eat it with a spoon.
About it. If Gary Oldman hadn't set off Francis, the bats part wouldn't have come. And so it's like it's a delicate dance on he, like, you know, he was saying he would fire people in the 70s on The Godfather before he'd get fired. It's like kind of an illusion, like magic. Hey, speaking of which, one thing I really like about Francis Coppola's Dracula is that he paid homage to some of the classics, and they're ones that I immediately knew he was inspired by. But he has a quote that his dad had told him: "Steal from the best." And one of my hard drives is called Cocteau. That scene with Keanu getting out of he's like defying gravity. He's on the side of a building. He starts to slide away.
Slide sideways, yeah.
Yeah, it's Cocteau's Orpheus.
Empêché et emporté par un grand souffle inexplicable.
And a lot of stuff in the house with shadows is like Cocteau's Beauty and the Beast. he was going to all this trouble to do the same things that people just seem to forget you can still do. Shoot in reverse. Cocteau did that a lot, you know. When Keanu Reeves walks into to the house, it's a simple thing, but it's so subtle and subconscious. It's like, why does it look weird when Keanu Reeves walks into a vampire's castle? Because it's shot in reverse. You know what I mean? Like, remember when the carriage comes and grabs Keanu and brings him in to the carriage?
It just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. All of a sudden, he's got
That's the stuff
arm.
I love. Yeah, yeah.
And Hammer did a great job with all the carriage stuff. It was always so creepy, you know?
I wish they would have made it a little, because I know this is one of those things where, yes, the carriage driver is Dracula.
Is it? Because I don't know.
Every time that it's kind of like the same actor. Yes, the same act. Look, go back to the 31 version.
You sure? Like, there's in the Prince of Darkness. By the way, I don't like the Bela Lugosi one. I've watched it once, and I was so bored.
They put the camera right in his eyes, and you could, I mean, it's Bela. You could tell that it's Bela.
Yeah, but I think the Hammer ones, I think that, you know, there's been so many different variations on the themes.
There's no driver.
You know, I think sometimes it's a different person driving.
I don't know if it's intended to be Dracula driving, or it's just kind of like how Mr. Darling is always portrayed by the same actor that plays Captain Hook in Peter Pan.
Oh, yeah. By the way, what?
That's what they're doing, or if it's literally supposed to be, this is another incarnation of Dracula picking him up.
What's up with the driver's outfit in that scene? What is he? Is he a knight from frickin' Legend? I mean, what is that?
I think maybe since it was in the 90s, maybe Gary was just going to go to a freaking goth club whenever they rapped. He didn't want to bother changing.
On the next close-ups,
Tom Waits' character is so fun.
You could tell he was just this side of Artie Johnson's portrayal in Love at First Bite.
Would you like an hors d'oeuvre?
Hors d'oeuvre, Dr. Theodore, or canapé.
Canapé.
I'm no lunatic man, I'm a sane man fighting for soul.